Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Ronnie Trost podcast, auto repair videos. So, been having a lot of trouble with my Thunderbird Super Coupe, 1990. So, I want to go through all the things that I had to do to figure out to keep it running. So, I was driving down the street and it would just die and then crank and not start, or it'd start and die right away, and it'd start and die, or it go start jiggling down the road, like go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, and I couldn't figure it out. So finally, I figured a lot of it out, but it did sit for like a couple year or two. But I mean, I keep fresh oil and stuff in it, so it shouldn't have been too bad. Keep fresh gasoline in it. So what I really didn't plan on was that it could have been more than one problem at the same time. It's kind of like a trick in auto mechanics. You think you fix one thing and it's going to run, and then it does the same thing, and that's because two things went wrong at the same time. This case might have even been three or four things. I don't even know. But it's kind of like the electronics for this car is kind of like a Chinese jigsaw puzzle. You know, no shade on the Chinese, but my Bumblebee, my Camaro, if you run a wire from the distributor to the battery, it'll start. Simple. But this thing, you got all kind of sensors and computers and all of this stuff. So I'm going to go through a lot of that stuff and show you what it takes to keep this car running electronically, and the things that could go wrong. Now, the first thing I want you to understand is preventative problem solving. Okay, whoops, got a lot of junk here in my carport. Preventative diagnostics. Okay, this is what you want to do before it dies. Like, let's say right now it's running great. In which case you probably wouldn't want to find my video, because there's no reason for you to fix something that's not broke. But that's not really true. So if you just Google Super Coupe, hopefully you'll find it. What you want to do is very important. Like, of all things to do, if you have one of these cars or a car similar to it, it's almost very similar to some Ford pickup trucks. The Ford Super Coupe, same type of electronic system. Is you want to buy parts before they go bad, which doesn't seem to make sense. But in the long run, the amount of money that you spent will pay off tremendously in diagnostic time. Tremendously. Because there's so much electronics in this vehicle that when you start diagnosing it, you really can't diagnose it. I mean, I've looked at the manuals of the electronics, and I can't even make heads or tails of the schematic. You got to follow wires through different pages. You try to follow this wire, and then it goes into these connectors, and then I should show you, I guess, but trust me, the schematic is impossible to figure out. So I said that because that's not the way you figure out how to fix this car. Because you're not going to like have like a voltmeter and connect it to two wires and figure out what's wrong with this car. That's not going to happen. Okay. So I'm going to go through what you should do in advance. Like if it's running now, if your car is running good now, now's the time to fix it. And I don't mean fix it, but I mean pretend like you're fixing it. So you know in advance what to do when it finally does. It will finally die on you. Something will go out eventually. But what you want to do is when that happens, you want to be able to fix it fast and efficiently without taking it to a shop, without paying them thousands of dollars, is you can figure out how to fix it if you listen to what I'm saying now. Okay? So, I've already made some videos about using the breakout box. If you need to go back and watch those, that's also very important. Okay? Is getting a breakout box and using the breakout box. As a matter of fact, you should use the breakout box before it breaks down. Again, because not everything is according to the instructions. Like let's say breakout box pin 57 is supposed to have 5 volts. Doesn't have 5 volts. It's a made up number, but let's just follow me for a second. Pin 57 is supposed to have 5 volts. If it's running perfectly and it doesn't say 5 volts, then that's never going to be the problem. It's that instruction manual. Each car is a little bit different. That instruction manual that part of the instruction manual doesn't apply to your engine. So if it dies and then you try to figure out and you go, oh, well, pin 57 doesn't have 5 volts. Like it says, well, it doesn't need the 5 volts to begin with. But you wouldn't know that unless you tested all the pins, and then had a notebook and wrote down which pins are showing the correct voltages while it's running perfectly and which ones are not, so that when it breaks down, you follow, you might have to replay that a couple times. So when it breaks down, you're like, well, that's normal that it doesn't have 5 volts. That's not the problem. You see what I'm saying? So you're diagnosing it before it breaks down so that you understand when it breaks down what's normal in the diagnostic process and what's not normal in the diagnostic process. Okay, so for example, I just did the breakout box and there was some sensor that's supposed, there's a whole bunch of, I can't even list them all, there's like 100 sensors. I didn't get no readings off them, but the engine could fire up perfectly, so that those readings are not even necessary for that engine to run. I just want it to run. I don't need to have every sensor working perfect. I just want it to run. If it's running, it's running good. If it's not running, it's either running good or it's off. It's never like running, well, it does kind of hesitate at a red light sometimes, but we're going to go through some of that too. Okay, so before it breaks down, now if it broke down, and this is the first time you saw my video, we may be able to get it running, but then again, if it does get running, then go back to step 1 and pretend like you're re-diagnosing it for the first time, see? Which is what I did. I've done this 3 or 4 different times. Like major, schematic, electronic diagnosis of this electronic maze of things that keep this engine running. That's why I'm making this video, because I'm not sure there's ever going to be a video out there like this for this car. So I'm going to take a pause and hook it to the tripod. Hold on. All right, we're on the passenger side of the 1994 Thunderbird Super Coupe, supercharged. I got direct sunlight in my face. So I can't see what you're seeing. So I'm just going to have to pretend like I can see what you're seeing. This is the breakout box. I would get one of these beyond any doubt. I got this used, but this is extremely important. I don't know, can you see it? The breakout box. Now they put the computer underneath the glove compartment. That was a bad idea for the engineers, because you have to really dig in there to get the computer out once that computer breaks, or even to diagnose the computer. So once the computer's out, just leave it hang down there where the passengers put their feet, because if you put it back up there and then you got to take it back out, I mean, it's just so much work to just leave it hang. Once you get it down and it's hanging from the wires, just leave it hang there, because you got to keep. I've taken that thing and put it back together 20 times since then. I'm not putting it back up in there and bolting it to the frame. I just tell my passengers, don't kick my computer. I mean, if you want to put a protective wall over it, some metal or wood or something, so that the passengers don't kick the computer, that's a good idea. I don't really have that many passengers, maybe one or two every once in a while. I say, don't kick my computer. Okay? So, if you can, it's very difficult to get the computer out the way that they have it lodged in there. Another bad design. That they're like, you have to almost pry it apart without breaking it. Now you can break the computer. If you're gonna go buy a new computer, you could break it and it'll come off on the outside that's holding there's two pieces of plastic, an inside and outside piece of plastic. So you can break the computer plastic to get the computer off, is what I had to do one time because it wouldn't pry itself off. Once you get you're gonna put a new computer in, then you want to get dielectric grease and grease all around the inside of the computer, the outside of the computer connection. Just keep that grease, to keep the whole connection greased with dielectric grease inside and outside, so that they'll slide apart. They still won't slide apart very easily. You still got to pry it apart with a screwdriver. It's very difficult. You know, sometimes you can grab it and pull it apart if you're lucky. But you kind of have to pry it first, then pull it apart. It's very difficult to get that computer off. But once it's off, go ahead and grease it, grease, because it's going to help you the next time you take it off. It'll all be greased. It's still going to be hard to get off, but it'll all have dielectric grease on it. Okay, and eventually it'll pop off. Now, are we still filming? Okay, you see how these have the numbers, and then it comes with a book. Okay, then the book, I scan everything into my computer that I can have time for, in case I lose the book or the book gets rained on or something like that. It's already scanned into my computer. But you see, when you get to the part where I showed you this before, but you test the pins with a voltmeter. Okay, so I have the voltmeter, and you test the pins. So if you test them before it breaks down, that's what I'm trying to say. You got to take it apart, and you get yourself a notebook. I mean, you could write on this, I guess, if you wanted to, but then you can't use it on the next car. But you write down each pin what the readings are while it's running. Like no reading on number 32. 33 had 6 volts. 34, 12 volts. So you know what it's like when it's running good. So you write all of that down. So this one part goes to the computer, and one part goes to the car electrical system. I showed you that in my other video. Now, I don't know where. The other most important thing is just a simple, I thought I had it in here, but I don't. It's a simple spark plug tester where you pull one of the lines off, one of the spark plug wires, and you put the spark plug tester in there that flashes. If it's flashing, you're getting the spark that you need if it's flashing. It doesn't have to flash fast, it's slow. Flash, flash, flash. Okay. It's basically most of the, it doesn't mean you're getting fuel injection. That's a different mechanism. We're going to go over that. But at least it means it's sparking. It doesn't mean you're getting fuel, and it doesn't mean the fuel injectors are working. It just means you're getting the spark if you have a spark plug tester, which I usually keep one in here. Okay? But apparently it's in the toolbox or something else, somewhere else. Okay. And you also have some wires if you want to do the number with the thing above. There's plenty of videos about that. It's also in this book. If you want to do the diagnostic computer where it flashes the engine light, it also has those numbers in here too. But even when it wasn't running right, it would say passed. So I don't know. But I keep one of those connecting wires in there too. So that's the breakout box. Okay. Now, I said all that to tell you that even that's not going to tell you much. It's going to tell you a few. The sun is pounding on my. I'm sweating. It's not going to tell you as much as you wish it would tell you. So, what you want to go get is an extra computer from O'Reilly's. Okay, and some of them are 1 year warranty and some of them are lifetime warranty. That's why I wrote on here lifetime warranty, because they could scan this code. They were selling me 1 year warranty, not telling me they had lifetime warranties. Now I know they got lifetime warranty. For another $10, get the lifetime warranty, not the 1 year warranty. Well, anyway, if it's not running, you got to order this for $120, I guess, something like that. But you got to wait 3 or 4 days to get it in the mail. I mean, get it delivered to the store, right? So you want to have one ready to go to test. And then you have, when it's running, you want to switch them and make sure the engine is running with both of them. This one it runs good, this one it runs good. So now I have a backup for when it breaks down. It doesn't run. I just switched them, you see? Now, if it's still not running, then it's not the computer. So there's nothing wrong with the computer. Because I switched it and it still doesn't run. That's not the problem. But in order to diagnose this quickly, you need to have this ready to go. This should be ready. I like to keep it in the refrigerator, but lately I've been keeping it in the trunk. If you start getting problems and you start carrying it around with you in the trunk, because instead of getting it towed, maybe you just change the computer. I'm starting to keep this around, carrying this in the trunk. The main thing that let's go back to this for a second. The main thing that you need to learn is to make sure your crank sensor is performing, is clicking. And this will tell you, this is the most important thing for me for this is to see that the crank sensor is working. If the crank sensor isn't working, then you are gonna have to, I got another video to show you how to do that, but it's a lot of work. You're not gonna do that on the side of the road. But this will tell you on the side of the road if your crank sensor is working. If your crank sensor is blown out, You're going to have to get a lot of work done on this car underneath where the crank is, okay? So for me, this is the most important thing. It also tells you if it's getting power and things like that, which you could tell without this, but this crank sensor working, spark plug sparking. That's your main thing. Then, okay, so now I'm going to show you the craziest thing that was killing my engine. I already started taking it apart, actually. Is this ignition switch? It's called an ignition switch. Not the part with the key, but this metal thing. So this key pushes a piece of metal into this to turn it on and off, to turn your power on and off. So what was happening, it was the weirdest thing, was it happened when it was cold in the morning more than any other time. So I thought that might have something to do with it, that it's cold. But the engine would start, and then when I put it in reverse, the engine would die. So I do it again, start it, it run, I put it in reverse, engine would die. So I thought, oh, well, it must have something to do with the transmission, but it's an AOD, so there ain't a lot of electronics involved in that, but there's a reverse switch. So I'm like, well, I wonder if the reverse lights are somehow shortening the ignition system. So I went and checked some relays and things like that. But then all of a sudden I realized, well, when the engine dies, the window doesn't come down. And I was thinking, well, it must be blowing some circuit breaker, because then it comes back on. But I went and checked the circuit breakers, and then for some reason, when I turned the key on, when I had turned the key on, which approximately about here, if I moved the key back a zillionth of an inch, the power would come off, and the engine would die, and the windows would stop working. So it was just the fact that in its normal operating position, then it goes back like a hair. Boom, engine dies, windows don't work. So it wasn't all of that other stuff after all. It's this little box, okay? And it's not that anything inside was wrong with the box. It's that it's separating. I don't know if I can get the camera in the right position here. Hold on. Okay, let me show you. You see this is separating? So when I squeeze it together, that's supposedly how it came from the factory, and this is what it is now. So this movement, on, off, I guess some plastic is wore down inside there, but when it's like here, I could tell if I pushed up on this, the power would come on. I let go of it, the power would come off. So this is the craziest thing that would keep your engine from running, is this ignition box being loose like that. So I think I'm going to try to put a clamp on there. I mean, they're $25, but I'm like, okay, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not being held together properly. So I'm just going to try to put a clamp on there instead of ordering parts that may or may not work right and spending money I don't need to spend. So anyway, that's technique number 459,000 for this car. Oh, by the way, on that ignition box, you're going to need a T27. I got these on Amazon, You can just get the T27 at Lowe's, but I'm like, well, why don't I just get a whole set? But the hole in the middle is necessary to go inside of this. What can I do? You see there's a knob in the middle, so you can't use a regular star. That's what's holding the ignition box, and it's very difficult. So you have to make like, so what I did, took me a way longer than it should have time, was I made this T27, the third one. I just had to use the socket, hold on, the hookup for the socket was too big to fit in there. So let me hook this up. So this is how I made the wrench to fit. Because if you hook the socket up to it and then another miniature ratchet, it's too wide to fit. It's too wide to fit in the gap. It took a long time, so I just wanted to let you know. When I put it back together, I'm going to go to Ace Hardware. I'm going to replace those with hex bolts to make my life easier in case I have to take it apart again. So just to let you know, that's the next technique. One thing I thought it was a new fuel pump, which I don't think it needed anyway, but I thought, well, after 100,000 miles, I'll just try a new fuel pump. So the best way to do this is to cut it out, because of the fact that the new fuel pump leaked. The gasket wasn't fitting on there properly, even if it was trying to fit on there properly. So if you drop the tank and try to fix it, put the tank back up, it may leak and now your car smells like gas. Then you drop the tank, try to fix it again, it leaks again, and the car smells like gas. So the best way to do this, don't even drop the tank, is cut this out. And then after you put it together and you find out it's leaking, you get this Permatex gasket maker. You can't read that, but it says fuel resistant. So if you just get regular gasket, that gas might dissolve it. So then I just take this brush and I keep brushing around where the gas leaks out, more and more and more in the little cracks. And then you do it all like you think it's sealed. Then you go fill up the tank and you find out it's leaking a little more right here, it's leaking a little right there. And you let it run a little bit of gas out of it, and then you put the gasket sealer back on there some more, filling up all the little cracks and holes until finally it stops leaking. Now I see the other guys using an angle grinder, but with the gas fumes you could blow your head off, so this is all you need. If you use this, maybe you want to sharpen an old one or buy a new pair, it will cut through this metal. If you push down hard enough, it'll cut, and you don't need to shoot all them sparks around like you see the other guys do. And when I finally get it where I know for sure it's not leaking, then I'll make a covering piece of metal for it and put the seat back in. Also clean these. It's supposed to have a piece of plastic that somehow fell off, like even before I took it apart. But I bought another one. I have to replace that one. When I know the gas, I'm going to put the plastic that, but you can clean these with, like, you could pour some Coke on it, Coca-Cola, clean that. Maybe spray it again with some fuel injector cleaner, and then put on your always whenever you're working with electrical connections, you put on the grease for I forgot the word. What's the word? Dielectric grease. You put dielectric grease on each one and make sure they hold down. Sometimes they pop back up. Okay. That I thought was causing a problem, but that also wasn't causing a problem. All right. So I just finished installing the ignition switch, which is not the key, but this metal part here. So I went ahead and bought a new one. I couldn't get a clamp around it, like a radiator clamp, because then it blocks the ability to bolt it back up. The old one just kind of disintegrated as I pulled it apart. So it's a $25 part, and it seems to be holding a lot. You know, it's holding stronger where it was separating, which I checked when I bought it to make sure that was solid. And then I went to Ace Hardware and got some extra. I matched up the old ones they had, which were too hard to work with. You had to buy the T27. That's not it. You get a little kit from Amazon. If you're in a rush, you can go to Lowe's and get one at a time. But the T27, it's got the little hole in the middle and everything. But then I had to there's no way to hold it because there isn't much space where you put the wrench, because you hit this plastic as soon as you try to put something in there. So I went to Ace Hardware and I matched up the threads, and I got, I always buy 2 or 3 extra, but let's see, where's the camera? It's like a M6 1.0 thread. Now I got the hex. Of course, they were shorter, so I just bought some nuts to go with it and a lock washer to make the size right. But now, instead of trying to get that T27 in there, I just grab a 10 millimeter open end wrench, and then that snug it up good right there. So now I can turn the key on, test it out. You got to put the pin inside of there as you're putting it up. But now I just tested it, and so it doesn't turn off as fast, messing me up from before. And this is the kind of mess. All the different wrenches and screwdrivers just to do that. I was holding the T27 with a little vice grip to unscrew it. It took a long time, but you know, you can have all these tools and still be stuck. So anyway, let's. Okay, I started the engine to show you that this little bulb blinking means it's not blinking now because the engine's off. But if you're cranking it, let's say the engine's not running, you're cranking it, but you want to know if the fuel injectors are getting a pulse. They basically get, the way it works is they have positive wire, and then it grounds it when it wants it to shoot some gas. So it's ground. That causes the light to blink. And that's how you tell if your fuel injectors are working. So the first thing you do Now this is a bulb that comes with a kit, see? So it's hard to do with, hold the camera. So you pull the bulb back out, right? And that's a fuel injector. I got to plug that back up to the fuel injector. That's a test for your fuel injector. So the bulb, this is called a, I think I showed you this before, Noid light tester. So the bulb that fits, all it does is really fit the plug, different size plugs. But I put tape around this one so that I knew it was this one's for the car. So what that does is it tells you if your cam sensor is working, okay? Now this is a cam sensor. So I put a new cam sensor on. This is the old one. The old one already has about 75,000 miles. So you really have to get down in there. Trying to find it again for you. So what I did was where's that cam sensor? I'm trying to find that cam sensor. I had to take something off. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I took the belt off. It's down in there. It's hard to see from this picture, but you don't have to take anything else off the engine other than the belts and this radiator hose. And you can get down in there with the, it's the same size. It's two of these, the same size as this up here. There's two of them. And it's down, you can get to it if you take your time and just take this hose off, this. I didn't even think I had to take this one. I just took this one off in the front, this one. I didn't have to take this one off. The cam sensor, supposedly, theoretically, is what tells the fuel injectors to blink, to blink on and off. So if that bulb that I hooked up wasn't blinking, then the cam sensor may not be working. So this tells you if it's blinking, it's telling you the cam sensor is sending out the signal for the fuel injector. So you got your I need to get some light going around here. Let me see. I gotta hook this back up. Okay, so that's hooked back up. So that's your, I usually pull this one off. It seems to come off pretty easy, the one there on the right. And hook the node up to it. That tells me, so first we check the crank sensor with the breakout box. Next, the computer. Next, cam sensor, which is checked by the fuel injection system. The fuel injection light's blinking. We pretty much, also we want to check the spark. So the way we do that is we find a wire, which I would say is this one back here. Easiest to get to, you find that wire, okay, and then, oh, let's see, did I bring it out here? I thought I brought it out here. Let's see if we got it. Yeah, spark plug tester. Okay, so you hook that part to the wire, this part to the spark plug, and if this light blinks, blink, 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 you got spark and you got fuel injector. So these are all the things. Now, again, there's another thing back here, which is the fuel pump regulator, which is a switch that theoretically could burn out. Mine's never burnt out, but that's also something. So theoretically, if you have the money, you want to buy one of all of these components, which I'm not even done talking about, so that if you need to fix it on a road trip, you can keep switching out parts. Let's get back to, I'm also working on the window. The motor, I put new motors in them, but they don't work. The windows slipped out of its slot, so I gotta fix that. Got power windows. Where is my other stuff? Gotta find some things now. Let's see what we got. Looks like I lost a component. Let's see, where would it be? Might even want to keep an extra fuel filter. Just put a new fuel filter in. What else? Oh, here we go. Now, this is called the DIM, which theoretically could also go bad. So, this is the original one that still works. This is the new one. Not holding the camera right. Okay. This is the original one, still works. This is the new one. But you could switch them back and forth. So you want to switch them when your car is running to make sure they both work. And then when you're on a road trip and it won't start, you just switch it out and see, well, maybe this is what's wrong. In which case you definitely wouldn't be getting any spark, because that's what controls the spark. And so your spark plug tester wouldn't blink. This can also be tested at AutoZone. They have a machine. Now, sometimes the people working in there don't know how to work the machine, but you can test them in there. But what I'm saying is, it's easier, faster, to just have an extra one. So you can have an extra cam sensor. You can have an extra DIM, right? Extra computer. Now, let's go over here. And this is our main power control box, which is even more important than the small fuse box. So you want to be able to go in here, taking a look to see if any of these have popped. You should be able to see through the window if they're popped. Now you see this right here? This, if it's not a Super Coupe, supercharger, this is probably going to control your ignition system, because if you look on the box, you see where it says EEC relay star. That's electronic ignition system. The star says all engines except 3.8 liter Super Coupe. So there's actually a component here, relay switch for the computer except a supercharged engine. So if you pull this out, use a screwdriver to hold this back, pull this out. It's actually a component with metal terminals, and it looks like it actually is supposed to do something, but it doesn't do anything. It's a dummy. Because I've pulled this out and the engine keeps running to see if that was the problem. And that means that this could be completely missing and the engine still runs. That's why it says that EEC except Super Coupe, because it doesn't do nothing for the Super Coupe. But it looks like it's a real relay, and you might want to try to carry an extra one around. This is for the horn relay. So you can kind of match all these up. See, if you turn it this way, right, there's 2 here, there's 3, and there's this row. So you can see what all they do. You got rear window defrost, anti-lock motor, fuse panel, headlamp, passive belt, ignition coil. Oh, that's the other thing. So I was having some serious problems with it, jerking the engine around while I was driving, and I had tried different computers, different DIM, different this and different that. I said, well, the only thing left, which I have no way of testing, is the coil pack. So I just went out and bought a new coil pack. It was 120 bucks. Put a new coil pack, solved the problem. Car quit dying, quit jiggling around, all that stuff. So eventually, I guess after about 80,000 miles or so, 100,000, your coil pack is going to go bad. So if you're in that range, just go ahead and buy a new coil pack, because you don't know when it's going to go out on you. And throw the old one away. And you can even carry 2 with you if you want. So these are the things you're going to want to check. If you check all of these things that I'm telling you to check, the car should run. Assuming some rats didn't get in and eat through all your wires or something like that. I also put in a hydro transmission. It uses the very hard, complicated process. But the one that it came with was electronic. But I did a whole video on that. I got it working right. You got to put some good transmission fluid here in the reservoir for the power steering pump. You know, new alternator, new power steering pump, new water pump, right? So obviously the point I'm trying to make is you buy extra parts, keep them in the trunk, and your diagnostic tools, and keep them in the trunk. And if all of these things have been checked, then the car should run. You know, it's as simple as that. So we got the spark plug tester. I thought I had got the voltage tester. I thought I brought my and trying to think if there's anything else you need to know. I mean, I've never had problems with this sensor. I don't know if it does anything at all. I guess it could do something. I got a new electric fan, an extra auxiliary fan. And so that should be everything you need to know to get this thing running again. Don't forget to subscribe. Very important. Till I get 1,000 subscribers, I don't get paid. One more thing to test. See if you're getting fuel. You see this little, it looks kind of like an air nozzle for a tire. If you hit that with a little mini screwdriver, it should shoot gas at you. If it shoots gas at you, it's probably got gas under pressure. Now, if you really want to get elaborate to find out if you're getting fuel from the fuel pump and everything and the filter and everything, then you can install a fuel pressure gauge somewhere in the line coming up to this, which I haven't done yet. I'm going to do it in the future when I got time, which keeps you informed of how much fuel pressure is coming up to this engine. So just remember, there's basically 3 or 4 things an engine needs to run: spark, fuel, air, and timing, and the engine should run.